I visited one of the government-sponsored community food stores that are located around the country, mostly in low-income areas. These modest establishments sell canned goods, pasta, beans, rice, and some produce and fruits at well below the market price, a blessing in a society with widespread malnutrition. Popular food markets have eliminated the layers of middlemen and made staples more affordable for residents. Most of these markets are run by women. The government also created a state-financed bank whose function is to provide low-income women with funds to start cooperatives in their communities. There's a growing number of worker cooperatives. One in Caracas has started by turning a waste dump into a shoe factory and a T-shirt factory. Financed with money from the Petroleum Ministry, the co-op has put about 1,000 people to work. The workers seem enthusiastic and hopeful. Surprisingly, many Venezuelans know relatively little about the worker cooperatives. Or perhaps it's not surprising, given the near monopoly that private capital has over the print and broadcast media. The wealthy media moguls, all vehemently anti-Chavez, own 4 of the 5 television stations and all the major newspapers. Yet Chavez is represented in America as a dictator who controls information. In fact, the information system is, as it is in our country, privatized and in the hands of wealthy oligarchs. The man most responsible for Venezuela's revolutionary developments, Hugo Chavez, has been accorded the usual ad hominem treatment in the U.S. news media. An article in the San Francisco Chronicle described him as Venezuela's pugnacious president. An earlier Chronicle report quotes a political opponent who calls Chavez a psychopath, a terribly aggressive guy. The London Financial Times sees him as increasingly autocratic and presiding over what the Times called a rogue democracy. A rogue democracy. ABC's Nightline labels him the leftist strongman who delivered a tirade in the United Nations against President Bush. In the liberal magazine The Nation, Mark Cooper, one of those Cold War liberals who nowadays regularly defends the U.S. empire, writes that the democratically elected Chavez speaks, quote, often as a thug who flirts with megalomania. Chavez's behavior, Cooper rattles on, quote, borders on the paranoid, is ham-fisted demagoguery, acted out with an increasingly autocratic style, unquote. Like so many critics, Cooper downplays Chavez's accomplishments and uses name-calling in place of informed analysis. Other mouthpieces is a good term for them, but I meant other media mouthpieces have labeled Chavez, I'll quote, mercurial, besieged, heavy-handed, incompetent, dictatorial, a barracks populist, a firebrand, and above all, a leftist. It's never explained what leftist means. A leftist is someone who advocates a more equitable distribution of social resources and human services. A leftist is someone who creates that clinic that I visited, who supports the kind of programs that the Chavez government is putting in place. Likewise, a rightist is someone who opposes such programs and seeks to advance the insatiable privileges of private capital and the wealthy few. So what's wrong if he's a leftist? Why don't you stop and explain what you mean when you label and besmirch someone as leftist? The term leftist is frequently bandied about in the U.S. media, but it's seldom defined. The power of the label is in its remaining undefined, allowing it to have an abstracted, built-in, demonizing impact which precludes rational examination of its political content. Meanwhile, Chavez's opponents, who staged an illegal and unconstitutional coup in April 2002 against Venezuela's democratically elected government, are depicted in the U.S. media as champions of pro-democratic and pro-West governance. We're talking about the free market plutocrats and corporate military leaders of the privileged social order who killed more people in the 48 hours they held power in 2002 than were ever harmed by Chavez in all his years of rule. When one of these perpetrators, General Carlos Alfonso, was hit with charges for the role he had played in the undemocratic and treasonous coup, the New York Times chose to call him a dissident whose rights were being suppressed by the Chavez government, his right to go and destroy the government. 4 other top military officers charged with leading the 2002 coup were also likely to face legal action. No doubt they too will be described not as plotters or traitors who tried to destroy a democratic government, but as dissidents, simple, decent individuals who are being denied their right to murder people they disagree with. Their right to disagree with the government. President Hugo Chavez, that was an intentional mistake. President Hugo Chavez, whose public talks I attended on 3 occasions, proved to be an educated, articulated, remarkably well-informed and well-read individual. Of big heart, deep human feeling, and keen intellect, he manifests a sincere dedication to effecting some salutary changes for the great mass of his people. A man who, in every aspect, seems worthy of the decent and peaceful democratic revolution he is leading. Millions of his compatriots correctly perceive him as being the only president who has ever paid attention to the nation's poorest areas. No wonder he's the target of calumny and coup from the upper echelons in his own country and from ruling circles up north. Chavez charges that the United States government is plotting to assassinate him. I can believe it.